Good morning and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is June 1st, and the time now is 9:15. Notice of this budget hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on May 24th, followed by May 26th, and again today's and May 28th. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 55-36 COR, the fiscal year 2021-2022 Appropriation Act requested by the Governor relative to the Department of Integrated Service for Individuals with Disability. Fiscal year 2022 budget request. I'd like to acknowledge the senators that have joined me. I have the Speaker, the Oversight Chair of Health, Speaker Therese Terlai, Senator Telo Taitagui, Senator Chris Duenas, and Senator Tony Atta. General rules of this budget hearing shall be those testifying on behalf of Bill 55-36 relative to the Department of Integrated Service for Individuals with Disability are invited to the panel. And there are the Director, Ms. Phyllis Young-Guerrero, followed with her staff, Michelle Perez and Rita Sotomayor. I hope I didn't crucify your last name. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and then the testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. But Ms. Young-Guerrero, you have all morning to testify. Those testifying will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by the members of the committee. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda, which is specifically your budget. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individuals testifying is not permitted. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and will be asked or escorted from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. For the purpose of this budget hearing, questions and comments? We'll skip that. Please state your name and your title for the record. At this time, I ask the panel members from Department of Integrated Service for Individuals with Disabilities to rise and for our sergeant arms to please swear them in.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information that you provide today, whether it be in writing, electronically, or verbally, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Mr. Chair, they're under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant Arms. Ms. Phyllis Young-Guerrero, you have some slides you wanted to present during your testimony?
Yes, Chairman.
All right. We have the MIS folks, please prepare the slides for Ms. Young-Guerrero to begin the discussion on her budget.
Thank you very much. Hafate and good morning, Chairman San Agustin, Madam Speaker, and members of the Guam Legislature. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony for the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disability, also known as DISIDs, for 2022 budget. My name is Phyllis Young-Guerrero. I'm the DISID Director. Along with me is Michelle Perez, the Deputy Director. On my left and on my right is Rita Sotomayor, the Administrative Services Officer, and also the Acting Administrator for Rehabilitation. Slide 1, please. DISID's mission is to improve the services for persons with disability by serving as a single point of entry, to promote and provide and ensure a full continuum of lifelong programs and services that allows for independence, productivity, and inclusion into the community. DISID shall also build partnerships with local and federal governments, nonprofit and private organizations associated for providing quality services to persons with disabilities. As per Public Law 24-16, DISID serves as a public service to coordinate and provide comprehensive community service services and vocational rehabilitation services for eligible individuals and with disabilities. As such, two divisions were established: the Division of Supported Services, also known as DSS, and the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, also known as DVR. Slide 2, please. DVR receives federal funds to administer the vocational rehabilitation program services to help eligible individuals with physical or mental disabilities, especially individuals with significant disabilities, to obtain, secure, or maintain employment. The goals of DVR: to increase the total number of successful case closures for DVR clients, to ensure a case management tracking system that will enable DVR to track required data to meet reporting requirements, to improve VR transition services for youth with disabilities who are in the high schools and are preparing to transition into the workforce, to enhance community rehabilitation provider CRP services delivery system through greater outreach, training, evaluation, and development of new CRPs, to promote and market vocational rehabilitation services to the community. DVR's accomplishments. In 2019, DVR and GDOE special ed personnel came together with the assistance of two technical assistance specialists, one from the Workforce Innovation Technical Assistance for DVR, and the second one was from the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition that was the support for GDOE. They came together to establish an interagency agreement for the two agencies to work collaboratively in evaluating, serving, and planning for a seamless transition from school for students with disabilities who are eligible on potential eligibility for VR services. GDOE and DVR recently established a task force. It's comprised of the VR counselors, VRA, GDOE transition coordinators, and the GDOE training personnel. This is to ensure that both agencies are following the guidelines established in the interagency agreement and to address any matters related to VR transition services for pre-employment transition services. DVR also provided its first virtual conference for the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Slide 3. The second division, DSS, is locally funded. It's responsible for the development of a community service delivery system, which includes the design, implementation, administration, coordination, monitoring, and evaluation of programs and services for persons with disabilities within the limits of local and federal resources that are allocated. The goal of DSS is to increase the number of individuals served through quality programs and services that promote independence and affirm the dignity of individuals with disability. The goals of DSS are to provide information and referral and case management services and participate in the No Wrong Door long-term services of support. To collaborate with GURA, Guam Housing, JICWIT, Department of Public Health and Social Services, and Guam Homeless Coalition. It also will collaborate with Guam Behavioral and Wellness Center in referring clients to the Community Rehabilitation Program and Respite Care Program. DSS also collaborates with AmeriCorps programs to develop student service learning projects and support youth preparedness council activities in the development of SLP and disability activities focus on emergency and natural disaster preparedness. DSS also participates in the Governor's Executive Committee of Care and supporting the sustainability of the Systems of Care Council and programs for children with severe emotional disorders. DISID also collaborates with other nonprofit organizations such as WestCare, American Red Cross, and Catholic Social Services. We are currently in collaboration with Public Health and an interested private entity to avail to Medicaid waiver program, which we hope will provide funding for eligible family member to be a caregiver for the recipient for them to stay at home or in the community. In addition, the program would provide funding for services for eligible individuals with disability and the elderly to enable services that may include meal preparation, laundry, grocery shopping, housekeeping, medical supplies, and medical equipment. The Deputy Director will speak on the great accomplishments DSS has had done.
The Division of Support Services accomplishments include establishing an MOA.
Ma'am, if you can just start with your name first.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Half a day, everyone. My name is Michelle Perez. I'm the Deputy Director for DISID. My glasses keep fogging up, so I apologize for trying to get it to unfog. Once again, some of the accomplishments that the Division of Support Services has done thus far is establishing an MOA with JIPWIC for the transfer of the Catholic Social Services contracts for respite care, CHP, and all three of the CARE programs, collaborated with the Guam Developmental Disabilities Council to identify the gaps in service needed for individuals with disabilities, collaborated with GORA to identify facilities that may be utilized to expand programs and support the gaps in service. DISID is also working closely with Public Health to utilize the Get Care MIS system, which will help with our case management. We provided virtual ADA coordinator training to government agencies and continue to do so. We're providing disability awareness and sensitive training to private and government agencies. We're also providing virtual conference for the National Disability Awareness Employment Month, which is what the director had spoke about. The current staffing pattern for the Division of Support Services consists of the director, the deputy director, a total of 3 social workers, and a secretary 1. Even with the challenges faced by the pandemic, such as the increase in new clients and influx of inquiries for assistance for such things as caregivers, assistive technology and equipment, just to name a few, the hardworking and dedicated DSS social workers and staff have continued to provide services to the individuals with disabilities. One of our success stories for this year is a client who was street homeless for over 4 years. He was successfully moved into his own apartment unit with 2 caregivers who were also homeless. As a wheelchair user with lower extremity weaknesses, he needed the assistance with everyday life skills such as hygiene, food preparation, transportation, and maintaining the home. DSS was able to provide donated home items and supplies for his new home, to include supplies for his 2 caregivers. Through great collaboration with nonprofit and Government of Guam agencies such as the Guam Homeless Coalition, WestCare, the Lions Club, GMH, GORA, GRTA, just to name a few, and generous family members in the community, the client was able to avail to a wheelchair, food, beds for himself and the caregivers, clothing, kitchen items, and other toiletries as well. Sorry, can we go ahead and do the next slide? These are just some of the other inquiries that we've had in the last, I'd say, 6 months that has increased tremendously into the Division of Support Services side. I yield back to the director.
Ms. Rita Sotomayor, the ASO and the acting VRA will be presenting our budget request for fiscal 2022.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rita Sotomayor. I'm the Administrative Services Officer for DISID, and as the director said, I'm also acting VR Administrator for the Division of Vocational Rehab. DISID's budget request for fiscal year 2022 FY22 is $5,109,528 of local funds, of which $1,049,028 is from the general fund and $4,060,500 is from the Healthy Futures Fund. The full amount of $4,060,500 from the Healthy Futures Fund is allocated to fund the respite care, personal care attendant, the community rehabilitative program, and Care Dot homes that are being transferred from behavioral health to DISID. The amount of $1,049,028 is from the general fund, is distributed to the following. $648,494 is allocated to the Director's Office and the Division of Support Services, with $514,453 to personnel, to fund personnel salaries and benefits, and $134,041 is to cover the operational costs in the DISID Director's Office and Division of Support Services. $36,108 is allocated to cover up to 10% of the salaries and benefits for the staff in the administrative office who work on non-VR federal-related activities. $364,426 is allocated for the VR local match. With this amount, DVR can receive up to $2,085,461 in federal funds. The grand total of all funds in this budget request, including the federal dollars, is $7,194,989. Thank you.
Once again, thank you for the opportunity to present and highlight DISID's missions for the people of Guam. If we have any questions or concerns, we're here to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Longuero. I'd like to also recognize my colleagues that have joined us, the Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes and Senator Joanne Brown. We'll begin with the Oversight Chair. Madam Speaker, if you have any questions.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Director and Deputy Director and Ms. Sotomayor. All right, so just kind of recap. The DVR, so you have two divisions, DVR and DSS. DVR seems to be fully federal funded if we put in $364,000 for the federal match. You would get $2 million, and that takes care of that division, with the $36,000 additional for non-VR related activities, right? So this program, can it be expanded? Like if we put in a higher match, can we expand it or not?
The answer to that is yes, because there are times when the grant that comes in is actually higher than what the local match is. Funds that come in from the federal dollars, they do not come in, they come in as the amount is based on a formula. It's not based on the expenditures from the prior years. So there are times when the funds that come in are higher, and so it's not considered returning. It's called a reallotment process. So,
all right, so what happened in fiscal year 21? This year, were you able to maximize?
No.
This year, fiscal year 2021, we are able to spend the local match, and then what happens is when you fully spend the local match, you can carry over to the following fiscal year the federal dollars.
Okay, but were you able to get your maximum potential federal dollars? Or was there more available, but you didn't have enough to match it?
For fiscal year 21, we may be getting another grant, but also in August, we reallot funds. So we do have sufficient funds for the local match because we're also using carryover dollars from the fiscal year 2020, this fiscal year. So we have two grants going on concurrently every fiscal year.
All right, and so then for FY22, this request is sufficient to attain your maximum amount that you can guess at this point?
At this point, yes. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. And in the event that we need additional federal dollars during the month of August, during a reallotment period, we can also go in and request for additional federal dollars, and then we need to request for additional local dollars. So
Yes.
that's all done every year before the month of August, because that reallotment process takes effect in the month of August.
Okay, and where would you request the additional local dollars if not here today?
We would go in through our budget office, BBMR, and request.
Yes.
All right, okay.
BBMR will, once we find out that we may need that additional money, then we start communicating with BBMR.
Okay, great. And then the DSS, the biggest change in your budget this year is that you're asking for this money, about $4 million, to take over a Guam behavioral health and wellness management of different programs. Can you just explain why you are doing that?
So, ever since the permanent injunction lifted, some of the clients that are currently availing to CARE-DOT, CHP, and respite, they are clients that do have individuals with disability that may be intellectually disabled or developmental delay. So, aligning with the agencies with behavioral and DISID, that we would have their clients, their clients that they've been serving for years, really are falling under our guidelines of intellectually disabled and developmental delay. So that's why it's coming back to us. But there is an MOA with behavioral that we will still need their assistance for assessment, because there are some, as I stated, we are the single point of entry when it comes to people with disabilities. So if this individual has a behavioral issue, when the assessment is done, we will know what agency would best serve their needs.
All right, so does this put an increased need for personnel on your division?
It would need an increase of need for personnel.
And is that covered then by the 4 million? Or are they transferring how's that going to work? How are you going to be able to do this? Yeah.
So currently, it's just for the contract, as you stated, the 4 million. And we do have an MOA in place that will give us that support from behavioral. For example, like I just said, the psychologist that we would need the assessment done. And, but to answer your question, personnel is not coming with it.
So how do you intend to cover this with your current personnel?
So we are currently having our conversation with the governor and the lieutenant governor about the needs that we need for this specific contract, that we obviously need personnel to keep us going, because as the deputy director stated, on the DSS side, we only have 3 social workers. And right now, I may be wrong, but right now, I would say their caseload is probably 120 to 130 per case, per social worker.
That's why I'm asking.
Yes.
That's why I'm concerned, because you're so short already with staff, it seems to me. And then you're bringing on these giant programs to kind of manage.
So, Speaker, we did email, we're dialoguing with JICWIC. So in 2009, there were 8 employees that basically were instructed to transfer with these contracts from DISID to JICWIC. And then in 2011, 6 positions stayed with JICWIC.
All right, well, do you have to take the programs? Can you leave them at Guam Behavioral Health since they have the employees there? I guess I'm just going to leave that to you, but it doesn't make sense to me right now why we are doing this pass-through of the contract money, but you're not really getting any increase in staff or anything according to this budget request to take care of these contracts.
So,
we don't want to be going backwards, yes.
and thank you, Speaker, for that support, because I understand that this body, the legislative body, doesn't want us to fail, because that's what this is all about.
Doesn't want?
About making sure we get the personnel we need, right? So it's a two-part question for me. If we get the personnel that was at behavioral, like I said, right now there were six are still stayed.
It
with
takes
the-
8 employees to manage these contracts. 6 of them are staying at Guam Behavioral Health. You're going to get 2?
No, we're not getting anybody.
Yeah, see, I don't get it.
Yeah. So let me say the numbers again. 8 were totaled in 2009 to go. 2 came back to DISID. 6 decided to stay with behavioral in 2011. So I'm just talking positions because obviously some of them are already retired. So I'm just only speaking of positions.
All right, well, I guess we'll discuss further with the chair about why this money is being transferred to this division. If you can't stand it up, these are very critical programs. I would like you to, if you think you're the ones who should be managing it, then by all means, but I don't see any additional request here for how staff to take care of those things. All right, let me ask you a couple more questions. So talking about personnel, you said 3 social workers, 1 secretary, and then the director and deputy director for the Division of Social Services. That's 6 people. We've got half of them here. Is that right?
That is correct, ma'am.
It's it's concerning. And so for the DVR, those are federally funded. How many are there that are not working with DSS?
Because this is federally funded, we already received guidelines when it comes to DVR's directions on federal funds that they definitely have to stay within the vocational rehab purview. But like Ms. Sotomayor said, her and another employee do give us support in the financial side and do documents for us when it comes to our paperwork, timesheets. And so there is monies that, yes, there are 2 employees that give, I believe it's 10% that they give their services to
Right, so we're funding
DSS.
that $36,000 for those.
Yes,
But how many DVR federally funded employees do you have?
there's 12, right? 14.
Okay, but they can't be used for DSS, right?
No,
Okay.
the people in the fiscal, in the administrative support, if we hired more, then that individual can also work up to 10% of their time.
Okay. You had in your staffing pattern 4 vacant positions. One is the administrative officer, program coordinator 1, and 2 social worker 1 positions for the Division of Support Services. There's no funding requested for those vacant positions, is that right?
That is correct.
Is the vocational rehabilitation administrator position filled? It's not on the staffing pattern.
For the VR
Yeah,
side?
VRA.
It is currently an acting capacity because there's a description specifically requesting for a certification for that.
So that's pending?
Yes,
All right. And then you were,
and it has been advertised,
okay, and you're going to try to fill that with the budget that you get?
correct.
All right.
We have been for so many years. It's just a very, I know that I had an opportunity to speak to some of the senators personally. It really is a hard position to fill. So we actually advertised it nationally. We actually, with the group that I spoke of, the Workforce Innovation Technical Assistance, that's a state from the, I believe they're from Virginia. We sent our advertisement to them. We also sent it to the National Technical Assistance Center of Transition. So
Okay.
they all have that advertisement of our VRA position.
All right. Can you just briefly about your office space? I thought the last time when you came for your budget, you talked about moving into the Hessler building, but you're now asking for additional $89,000 in increase of 35,000 for rent, if you could just explain?
So, because of the, because of the encumbrance that we're currently doing an IFB to move out, because one of our goals is we want to make sure DISID, DSS, and DVR move to a first floor. They've been in DNA for a long time. So that's one of our goals, and that comes down to the encumbrance that we have to have monies on the side that in order for us to even do an IFB. I just spoke to GSA Joy Jean, and she said in order for us to even move out, we have to have at least 2 months of that rent secured to another location, and even at that, we don't have it.
All right, so no more, you're not moving to Hessler?
Correct. Correct, ma'am.
Was there
I
an
believe public health moved into there?
Yes.
Correct.
But no, didn't you have an MOA before? Didn't you tell us about an MOA for?
Yeah, so the governor did share with us that because she sees the need of public health all staying together, that she moved everyone to Hessler because of the electrical situation they had. I don't know if it was a year and a half ago. So that was her concern, keeping them all together and moving them to Hessler. Moving the group that was misplaced, she was trying to make sure they were able to stay together instead of being hodgepodge in different areas on the island.
So that was canceled for you?
Yes, ma'am.
So you also have prior obligations according to BBMR of 51,000 approximately FY18 owed to DNA. But that, I don't see that included in your FY22 budget request. Are you expecting lapses this year?
Well, we are currently working, like we said, with not only the governor's office, but with BBMR. So they are aware of our lapses our monies that we owe. And so they have been dialoguing with us that they're trying to find the money to the 51,180 for the fiscal year 2020-18 that was not paid for the rent.
Okay.
So they are aware of it.
And
We've
so-
actually had that dialogue maybe 7-8 months ago.
And what about your lapses then? Do you expect any in FY21?
No.
The 51,810, it is in our 2022 budget under the prior year obligation.
Okay. All right, I didn't see it. I'll look again. Thank you. What about,
But for fiscal year 2021, no, we don't anticipate any lapse prior years.
okay. No other prior year obligations and no lapses for FY21?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then you talked about a case management tracking system under both DVR and DSS, and it says to meet reporting requirements. Are you funding that with your current budget request then?
So with DSS, we've been successfully able to partner up with public health. They're letting avail to the Get Care program that they currently have. And DVR currently is trying to get their tracking system. It's currently going through the process with GSA.
Okay, so no cost. You're able to get this without
Correct.
cost. Okay, perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Have you requested ARP funds for your agency?
You can talk. So we did get, the ARP. We did request for money.
How much and
So-
for what purpose?
It's to help the gaps that you hear. We do realize that some of these programs that we have, Respite, CHP, CareDot, they don't provide everything for attendance for caregiving. We do get a lot of calls. I know, again, we had an opportunity to talk to some of the senators, and we asked if you get those calls also, and the answer was yes, about personal care attendant. So we asked for monies to set aside for even down to, we get calls even down to prosthetic legs. So the plus that we have is Guam's community is very giving. When it comes to wheelchairs or hospital beds, we've been very fortunate to get nonprofit organizations giving us that support. But like I'll go back to the prosthetic leg, that's very hard. We also work with that client if their medical insurance can pay for it, and sometimes it doesn't happen. So that's why we're asking for the additional funds of the gaps that we know we need. We know that some of our clients may not be, it's called activities of daily living skills, they call it ADLS. So when they do the checklist and it's coming down to respite, they may not qualify because they don't meet that one checklist, because they're supposed to get 4 that their medical provider has to say, yes, they avail to a personal care attendant. But as you know, there are clients or individuals on Guam that may need that caregiver for at least maybe 3 times out of the week, maybe not 7 days out of the week, but 3 times. We know of people who have lupus that if they wake up, their bodies are aching. They're not able to move, but 2 days later, they're going to be okay. But what about those days that they may not be able to get that service? So that's where we come in and we get that additional fund. It would really help us because it is a gap that we know we need for the personal care attendant. So yes, Speaker, back to asking, did we ask and request for monies? Yes, we did.
Can I ask how much?
So we did ask, and it's around $3 million. And that's something that also helps out with independent living. We want to make sure that you heard about the respite. So we want to also help out with the CHP because Ms. Paris and I are both from Department of Education. We know what's coming our way. We know what are the clients that are going to need these services. Just recently, again, I had an opportunity, Ms. Paris and I had an opportunity to speak to some of you, and we know that some of our people of Guam leave because we don't have the SSI, the Supplemental Security Income. And if everything goes right and Guam is availed, because that's one of President Biden's proposal, is to give us, Guam, the opportunity to get SSI. I guarantee if we do get it, that I promise, there are going to be a lot of Guam residents moving back. Because of that case that went through with the twins, that's huge for Guam. This is not a problem that just started today. This is an ongoing problem that's been for 2 decades. So,
yes, I agree. And so if you can just be, again, very clear, what we're not funding that you're hoping to fund with the ARP would be, you said, equipment, prosthetic devices, wheelchairs?
Yes.
Additional caretakers? We can't get additional federal funds to cover those things?
That is correct.
Under your grant?
Correct.
Okay.
So with the grant, it's really vocational rehab, right? So if at their job site, they need an additional technology, possibly a laptop that will help them work efficiently at their job site because they need to be eligible, first of all, to be employed. So if they need that additional keyboard that's bigger, then that's when we step in so they can assist their supervisor on whatever they need to type.
And the respite care, CHP, and the 3 Caradat programs, there are no grants for those?
As of right now, no, ma'am. But just so you know, for our legislator, we have applied to 2 grants. So we're just waiting word by July, August, and hopefully DISID will be a recipient, awardee. That's another plus for us for mobility limitation. That's the grant that we applied for, and plus another one for COVID. So we won't know till latter July, early August, because there's 2 separate grants.
All right. Well, keep us informed, and thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Vice, do you have any questions or comments?
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, and Manana Sidus, to all our colleagues and to the panel members, thank you for being here this morning. I just want to ask several questions in reference to the process, and maybe what we could do is get a clearer picture of a lot of the other programs that DISID and DVR have together. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'll just start off. Director or anybody on the panel, in February of this year, the DISID inspected the University of Guam's vaccination clinic after receiving several complaints regarding accessibility. My question is, how many employees within your agency are able to conduct these kind of inspections, and what are the requirements necessary to increase the number of employees who are able to do them?
Vice Speaker, thank you for that excellent question. We actually have a social worker who has a law degree that we've asked them to step in to be our ADA coordinator. So yes, that is another position that we are trying to fulfill. The front office is very aware of it. They know of the need. They know that as we're in these trying times, a lot of sites for the quarantine, even to the vaccination sites, to find out if they're ADA compliant. So we're currently working on one right now. And yes, we need that. We need an ADA coordinator. And I know we had it years ago, but we haven't had one in a long time.
Thank you. My next question is, one of the goals of the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation within the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities is to increase the employment and independent living outcomes for persons with disabilities. And I will quote one of the programs. The Randolph-Shepard Act mandates that a priority to the blind person to operate vending facilities on federal property. According to the National Association of Blind Merchants, the average income of a blind vendor today is about $60,000. And according to the 2006 report from the U.S. Government's Accountability Office, GAO, a blind vendor operating food services for dining halls could earn up to $276,000. In 2009, Guam became designated as the state licensing agency, which is the first step in implementing the program. Has there been any meaningful effort to implement this program? What and if there are any barriers have you faced, and what support is needed to take advantage of this opportunity? Maybe Rita or anybody on the panel?
Okay. Hello, good morning. The Randall-Shepard program, yes, in 2009, our former VR administrator, they did apply for that, but it never really, never kicked off. And right now, there are several states that have the Randall-Shepard program, but none of the territories have it, not even Puerto Rico at this time. The state of Montana, also, and Wyoming. And it's because for now, it's the blind community here on Guam. We do have a MOA with Hawaii's Ho'opono Center. So we send our blind, the blind community who are VR clients, we do send them to Hawaii. And there is a Randall-Shepard program there in Hawaii. There is none in Saipan, Guam, or any of the other territories right now. In the future, it's not like we may need the assistance of Hawaii, including RSA, to help us to bring the program and have it here on the island. But at this time, with the staff, they're concentrating their efforts on the VR services.
Rita, I just want to share with you that a constituent, a few, had come in requesting about the initiation of this program, and that's why I said I would personally take the time to ask DVR, what are the likelihood of this coming through? Because I know that there is funding that can be acquired to get this program started. So I'm hoping that maybe there could be some synergy put into revisiting that and making sure that we have that opportunity here, because there is that interest. Okay? The next question is Public Law 26109 requires, and I know you're very familiar with this to the panel members there, that the government of Guam's department and/or agencies to employ at least 2% of the workforce with severe disabilities. How many government agencies are in compliance with Public Law 26109, and how regularly does DISID review the staffing patterns of each of the agencies to ensure compliance, and what resources are needed to increase DISID's capacity to conduct such a review?
So, Vice Speaker, We just recently visited that like a couple months ago, and right now we only have 5, if not 5, then 4 agencies that are currently in the 2%. But I do want to bring this up. I know that we had an opportunity to talk to you personally about this. So when you read the Public Law 24-16, and it does talk about the 2%, right? So this is why I want to share with you, if you go to it, it says that to get that certification, they have to go through DVR, right, the client. So let's say I'm applying at a line agency. So my application has to go to Department Administration. If you look at the HR application, I believe it's page 4, where you're requesting for disability preference points. If you ever have a chance to look at it, it tells you have to go to get clearance from Department of Public Health. So now we're asking our individuals with disability to do 2 things. We're asking them to get a clearance for DVR, and then now if they decide that they're going to self-identify, which obviously they want to because they're coming through DVR, they're going to have to go to public health and get that signature just the same. So I've been saying this, and I know as Vice Speaker, I talked to you personally about this. We believe in independence and advocacy. So we don't want to limit our clients that they have to come through DVR. If they're going to self-identify, back to the application of DOA, because as a line agency, you would have to go through DOA. Then DOA also can track, because we talked to DOA about this, that they'd be willing to track the disabilities because they're the ones that get to see the application. We don't always get to see everyone's application. If you apply at DYA, we didn't know if they wanted to claim them self-identifying, right? So that's one, making them have the opportunity to be independent. So I'm going to use Department of Education because that's where we came from. They won't go through DOA, but we know that we have severe to intellectual disabled clients at DOA. So we want to give them that independence to be able to go and apply. And then if they decide that they want to be a DVR client, because from the experience that Ms. Paris and I have, and I know she's passionate about this, so I'm going to let her jump on the mic. Their former students that have personally told me, and I'll let her tell her story, they don't want to go through DVR. They want to be independent. They want to show that they have that skill set to turn in an application. They don't want to be limited to say, oh, DVR has to tell me what I need to do. That's how they feel. So I'm going to let Ms. Paris talk. She's run into this problem numerous times as a transition teacher in the high school level.
So, Senator, I know the intent of the 2% is it's good. The intentions are very good, and I believe that it's needed. I think there's just a little bit of concern with the fact that all individuals with disabilities who are seeking employment need to go through DVR in order to be counted as that 2%. And I think it's been a challenge for even government agencies to try and get to that point of meeting the 2% compliance. And speaking from personal experience with my students that have also, I work with individuals with disabilities for 18 years. I've been a transition for the past 15. So it's really challenging for our students and their families who don't want to go through DVR. And the thing with DVR as well is you have to be found eligible for this service, right? So it's not just specific, if you have a disability, you're eligible, you get in. So I think the intent is great. I think that just needs to be tweaked to where it's not specific to being, you have to be a certified client of DVR in order to meet that 2%. Because as the director has stated, and all of you have worked with individuals with disabilities as well, and you've come from DISID as well, Madam Vice, so you know that a lot of our individuals with disabilities want to be as independent as possible. So a lot of my students have actually gone out and applied on their own and gotten the jobs. So, you know, it's kind of, it's like a catch-22. You know, you want them to seek the service, but then if they don't and they're finding independence on their own to get the job, then they should also be counted as part of that 2%, most especially for the agency as well as for the individual. So I think it's just a matter of probably revisiting how it's written so that it's a win-win for everyone and everyone's in compliance. And I think that's the biggest thing, is making sure that we're in compliance with the 2%.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as the Oversight Chair on Human Resources, I will continue to look into this matter with the Department of Administration. My next question is, the 2022 DISID budget increases the appropriation for personnel services by nearly $85,000. How much staff would you be able to hire with this increase, Director Leongro? Or anybody on the panel?
Could you please repeat the question?
Or maybe you can correct me. If the DISID budget for fiscal year 2022, for personnel services has increased by 85,000, how many staff would you be able to hire with this increase? Or is my number wrong?
We don't show we didn't request for 85,000 plus.
I'm just showing that based on,
So maybe you can answer it with what did you ask for then, so that it'll clarify what our statement is.
For fiscal year 2022, as compared to 2021?
so is the difference, yes?
Is there a difference? No.
It was like 5,000 plus, but
Okay.
then that's usually included in the benefits and the increments.
Okay.
Okay, I will further look into this matter, as I was seeing the numbers differently. I will check with the OMB to see what is there so that we can, because to continue with personnel services, what efforts is the agency doing to increase the number of social workers on staff? I know earlier when the speaker was asking, you talked about working with the ARP funds and the governor's office. How close and what other actions are you taking to see this realization?
So back to the ARP, we do realize this is a challenge for the governor to allocate the money for everybody. So she does know of our personnel needs. Hopefully we are able to get three more social workers. Hopefully we're able to get an office aide, administrative staff.
Okay. Next is the DISID budget also includes a significant increase for the appropriation for contracts. Does the agency plan to contract additional services? And if so, what is the nature of these services?
So the contracts, the monies that we recently received was from the contracts from from behavioral. And so the monies that we have, it would be going to CareDot, or if they decide to bid, it would go for those programs again for what we know is CareDot, CHP, and respite.
Right, so Catholic Social Services will be no longer doing those programs.
That's them.
DVR is federally funded to administer the vocational rehabilitation program services to eligible individuals with disabilities to obtain, secure, or maintain employment. Is the current level of staffing for VR counselors adequate to meet the mandate? And how many counselors does this agency need to ensure people with disabilities get the services they need? I think that would go to Rita.
Yes, we recently hired in fiscal year 2020, towards the end of 2020, 3 additional counselors, and we're going in now with an additional 2 to accommodate the needs in the schools for the transitioning of the school students. Right now, we currently have 6 counselors. And
So when do you anticipate picking up on the others?
we picked up 2
right?
That brought it to 6, and then we have an additional 2 more going through the process.
And
So
within the-
probably that would be anywhere 30 to 45 days for the process, the recruitment.
Phyllis?
This is the best time to get them because, as Ms. Sotomayor said, that there's a program called pre-employment, which all of you are aware of. This is, again, with GDOE and DVR collaborating a lot better. So as our students get older into the adulthood, the transition's a lot smoother. So again, it's called pre-employment, and then what we're trying to do is trying to get a counselor assigned specifically into the school. So they have kind of like Guam Community College. They have their counselors directly into the school so they can come in and avail to the service.
Good to know. And then the final question, Mr. Chair, is the COVID pandemic has impacted employment for many of our local residents, especially those with disabilities. Job coaches provide necessary support for individuals with disabilities. However, federal vocational rehabilitation funds are used for job coaching under a 2-year time frame. Does the agency have any plans to support job coaching beyond the 2-year federal limit? I think we've talked about this one before. Anyone on the panel?
We are able to, of course, under the VR program, we do use federal dollars to contract out job coaches. And although it's up to 2 years, because we try to assist by placing some not every client needs a job coach, but when we do put them out in the employment site, it's generally the 18 months, and some are even less, 6 months to 1 year to learn the job, but with the most severe, up to 2 years. If necessary, if we have to go beyond that, then that's on a case-by-case basis, but 2 years is the norm maximum amount of time.
I understand that there have been requests that have come in our way, and I just want to know, has DISID entertained that additional support through the local component and not just through the DVR funding? Has there been a request by DISID in general to support these efforts? And I know that the request has come in by more than several residents in the community to seek for this kind of support.
We have one client out in the job site that is currently using those local funds, but with the amount that has been appropriated to DISID, like the first year, I believe it was 2020, where we were appropriated 100,000. Let's see if I can get that. We're not spending on. Thank you.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah, okay. With the 100,000 that was appropriated in 2020, we spent 28,000. And then we received again in 2021, the 68,738, and there have been no expenditures against that. We've been using federal dollars.
I do want to say this, Vice Speaker, that I do know that when the legislature does meet, when it comes to the monies for the local side on the job coach, I know that last year we did a virtual, and this was at night, and you all were still into session. I don't know, it was probably like 9:30 at night, and we did get that call regarding the local funds for the job coach. I did ask, and I know that at the time Speaker Terlahi was trying to see what I was saying, that give us the flexibility, the latitude if this body decides to give us local funds on the job coach, because we can't help people that come through our doors with that need prosthetic leg. We were told, after the public law was done, it was only for the job coach. So we have other clients that need this money, that give us this opportunity to say, okay, we may have $1,000 that we may be able to get you a wheelchair. Can your medical insurance pay for the other half? But we didn't have that flexibility or latitude. So I'm asking, if the senators, you do find monies and you do put it into the local side for job coach, give us that flexibility for our clients, our individuals that you receive calls. Oh, DISID's not helping, I need a bed. Well, we found beds. Oh, DISID can't get me a prosthetic leg. That, when they come through our door, that would really make a difference for us. So I'm just asking if you would consider doing that if you end up doing the job coach on the local side.
Thank you, Director Algie, and thank you to the panel members for being here this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice. I know that Senator Tello came, I think was the first one here, so we're going to start with you, ma'am. And then we'll proceed to Senator Joanne and go down the line. We're not going to skip anybody. We're just going to go down the line and be done with it. Thank you. Senator Tello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And see, it pays to sit next to me. I'm kidding. Hafadi, ladies, thank you so much for all you're doing at DISID, and please extend my congratulations to those who are employed over at DISID, who are doing everything they can possible to help those individuals with disabilities. I've met with you a couple times, Director Leon Guerrero, and as well as you, Ms. Perez. I appreciate the time that you gave me and for discussions I had. But, I'm just going to try and speed through this real quick. Most of the questions by Speaker Chalahi was asked, so I appreciate that. The one question I did have, you mentioned the ADA coordinator was something that's highly requested and needed. Was it incorporated in your budget?
No, ma'am. So at this time, we always had an individual, Jeff Warfield, who actually took the lead and with the request for me, because of his legal background, he was willing to step in and do all the sites. Like 2019, he actually went to DOC and did a site visit for that. When we went into pandemic mode and we opened up for the homeless shelter, the original plan was actually at the Paseo. So when me and Mr. Warfield went there, we shared that these are the following compliance you need to meet. So it didn't happen, because even down to what they were trying to put as a bed, even it's 36 inches for width, 32 inches for the toilet. I mean, there's really specifics that we need. And that's why it's so important. I'm highly requesting for an ADA coordinator.
And how much is that, Director Leon Guerrero?
For the position?
Yes.
I mean, it could start as minimum of $45,000.
Okay.
And then depending upon the certification that the individual has and the experience, it obviously is increased within the salary.
So you're looking at between $45,000 to maybe $60,000, right? Okay, with the benefits. So that's something that's been, you said, desperately been needed. I think that, we should have incorporated this into your budget. If it's something, and I know that you have someone helping out, but this position should be filled and should be there permanently over at DISID.
I appreciate that, Senator.
Okay. So we'll try and work on that. It was mentioned, the ARP was mentioned several times, all the things that you want to incorporate. How much money exactly did you request for an ARP?
$3 million. $3 million.
Okay, $3 million. Okay.
But as I shared, we all know that the governor has a
sure, I understand.
monumental task.
I'm sure and there's a line.
Literally, there is a line.
Well, I know you, Director Leon Guerrero, you'll probably be up at the break of dawn trying to be the first in line asking for that money. I mean, greatly appreciate all your hard work along with your deputy as well. And of course, your ASO, she's a good friend. I see her in the hallways, so I know that she's doing good. John, I appreciate all the information you provided here with the numbers, especially on the federal match. It was mentioned early in your presentation that I saw about funding. Well, actually, it's not funding. It says in the DSS section where you have all the wheelchairs, the shower chairs, etc. Then you had monetary assistance. How do you distribute that if somebody comes up, to DISID and ask for monetary assistance? How do you work that?
So Senator, what we could do is purchase gift cards from cost you less, so cost you less, pay less. I believe a month and a half ago, if not a month and a half ago, maybe a month ago, we had a couple come through our door, and it was an adult. They needed adult Pampers because CSS gives once a month, and they already ran out. So it just so happens we actually had a cost you less gift card that we were able to give. But that was literally our last one. So that's how we can help with monetary. Purchase the gift cards, and if it's from the senators, that'd be great. We could say this is from the senators that like to support you. We can eat, and we can make sure we track it. That's too easy for us to track, that we gave this gift card out to Phyllis Leon Guerrero, and it's for the need of her food supply, right?
So this is a donation thing that, okay, so someone comes to DISID and says, I'd like to donate, $100 to DISID to put in your gift card registry or something. And then, because as an agency, you cannot collect that funding. I mean,
so we cannot collect money, but we can get indeed money, right? I mean, kinds of gifts. We can receive gifts by public law. So back to the gift cards, we can receive those.
you can receive gift cards.
Correct. And then if it's too easy to get a tracker down. And let's say Payless decides to say, hey, we'll give you $500 gift card, but we want to show in kind that you show us where it went. That would be easy to do for us.
Well, so that means, Director Leongara, you're going to have a whole new, process and accountability for all these monetary gifts or gift cards that are coming in. And I think even as far as a nonprofit organization, this gets a little bit deeper. Like yourself, I'm sure you get a lot of people who come knocking on the door that needs assistance, and justly so. I mean, we get that as senators, coming to our offices asking for assistance to pay their power bill, to pay everything. But, that comes from our own pocket. It's not government funds. And it's definitely not something that's been donated to me, because I would have to be accountable for that. So I'm not going to linger too much in this area. Now that I know this funding is something that's donated to DISID to give out to individuals, there's got to be some accountability, and I'm curious to find out the structure that you have at DISID to do so. And I'll meet you at your office. Maybe it's as simple, and making a big deal about it, but I think it's very important, number one, the ability to assist these individuals who really need the help. And I don't want to stop something that's helping individuals, but I definitely have to make sure there's accountability in the process in doing so.
And
go ahead.
And like you said, Senator, the accountability is crucial. So that can be added into the Get Care system that we use on the computer, that it could be a Dropbox, whatever the amount is, and plus a legend that we write in, right? Because as you know, sometimes we don't have access to our computers. I believe it's shut down today, or it's not working right now, but because we can easily physically write it down, and then it can get inputted. Okay. But obviously that would have to be secured, because it would have names to it.
Okay, I'll get with the oversight chair too to find out how this process is going through to actually assist in any way we can, because I know those who need funding, they go to every agency, your agency, our offices. And so the next question I have with regards to assistance. I've received calls in my office for an individual who had a disability, and the story he was giving me was very unsettling, especially that he was being harassed, and people sometimes take advantage of people with disabilities, and it really angers me when I see that happening. I did ask him to call DISID for assistance in any way, and I think it might be on a legal perspective, or even to be able to go to the landlord. He was having problems with his landlord, requesting something that's out of the ordinary, and that's when people take advantage of people with disabilities. So if an individual were to call DISID who had a disability and says, I'm being harassed, what does DISID do in that case?
So automatically we would make sure that they're assigned a social worker.
Okay.
And then the social worker will step in and get the interview to find out exactly what happened. And then the social worker will end up calling the landlord. And if it need be, then GPD may step in Because we actually just had that incident maybe 7, 8 months ago, where we had public defender, us, and another agency, public health, come together for a client.
And what's the, I know you're lacking social workers at your agency. I mean, every department that deals with social workers, there's just a limited amount that's out there to assist you. And I noticed in your budget proposal for a staffing pattern, you know, I only see 2 that's been requested here. And then 1 vacant that's already been, the money is there for, that's been vacant. And then, has any of these been filled so far?
No, ma'am.
Oh.
And ever since the pandemic, our numbers have increased drastically.
Yes.
And again, as senators, you hear it all the time. You get your calls. Because Speaker Talai is very good about communicating with us, saying, hey, we need you to call this person, so we do. So back to that, the increase of asking for additional social workers is so more important after this pandemic, because we also know, as Ms. Teresa Arreola talks about, you know, depression. And a lot of things like this is happening because of the pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. So we get them through our doors a lot more, and needing that social worker, it really does help. And I know, again, you said DYA is asking, everyone's asking for additional social workers. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think you need to be at the front of the line there too, you know, trying to, because it really needs social workers. I don't know how we're going to do this, but please, you know, money should have been in this budget for those social workers, and I don't see it here. Why isn't there any funding for those additional social workers in your budget?
When we submitted our budget, we do have to follow the guidelines when we're preparing our budget, and it does say to fund only warm bodies. So when we initially put our request, that's before we were given a ceiling. So that's how you see all those additional positions there. But then when we were given the ceiling, there were guidelines to follow that only fund warm bodies, and that's what we did.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. And Director, I would request that you send the OFB Director, or, you know, the Oversight Chair of Finance, a request to fund those particular and put that money amount in there, because that's the only way you're going to get the money if you ask. If you don't ask, you're not going to get it. So you need to ask for this money with OFB, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Please submit that numbers. I'm anxious to hear those numbers too, because this is really disturbing. The last thing I have was, we got the $3 million for art, mandatory requests, social workers. Okay, I'm good. Other than that, I hope to see you in line, many of the different lines that you need to go in, Director Leon Guåhan. Go ahead, Deputy Director.
Hi, Senator. I just wanted to also just state that, yes, we are there to advocate for individuals with disabilities, but we also have to make it very clear that we are not there to provide legal advice. So that is something that really is stressed with our clients that do come in. So we do provide information on other avenues or other entities that can provide the legal advice, but we are there to advocate as best as possible for our clients.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tello, and thank you for that request for that additional information. Senator Juan, do you have any questions or comments for the panel, ma'am? You're next, ma'am.
I know, Mr. Chairman, but you know, in all fairness, I want to defer to my colleagues that arrived before me. I just prefer to do that, sir, if you don't mind.
All right, Senator Chris, do you have any questions?
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my colleague, Senator Brown. Good morning, Director Leon Guerrero, Ms. Perez, and our ASO here this morning. Thank you for being here, and thank you once again for all the work, the very critical work that you do. Many detailed questions from my colleagues earlier, so I just have two probably rather simple questions. One is, I noticed in your objectives, I guess this is near and dear to me, so I'm just going to ask this question. The severely emotionally disturbed children and the wraparound services was something that came into being during a time when I was at Department of Youth Affairs. So any updates on that program and the efficacy of it? I mean, is you still, well engaged with making sure that those wraparound services are taking place?
So we're currently working with the DYA director, plus the JICWIC behavioral director, because they all come together with the services they need, from behavioral issues to disturbance issues, and then as we collaborate to give more services to them and give them better direction. Even right now, there's going to be a DYA summer program, and this will help with kids understanding the focus, to understand why it's important to focus on your end goal, right?
Yeah.
So again, DYA, behavioral, and DISID are collaborating together.
Excellent. Just wanted to get an update on that. My final question is, earlier in another budget discussion and in our discussions with BBMR, the director indicated that some of the current issues with regard to funding and how the tracking is going for fiscal year 2021 has to do with federal funds being maximized. So especially those agencies with federal funds, my question will be to them, has there been a change over the last 2 to 3 fiscal years in terms of your federal matching and federal funds? And if so, what was the difference between prior years and what's currently been maximized?
Thank you for that question. In 2020, of course, many of the employers, a lot of them either closed their offices. They weren't really. We had some clients that they weren't able to continue working during 2020. So it was the amount of expenditures for trial work and job training. It was reduced in fiscal year 2020 during the peak of the COVID, but the amount of funds that we received was still consistent. It's based on a formula, so we still received the amount that we budgeted for. We just didn't spend as much in fiscal year 2020. One of the biggest expenditures we tried to procure for was the MIS system. That was up to close to $170,000, and that would have helped us to maximize our local match. But towards the end of the fiscal year, it was not processed. So the bid didn't go through. So in fiscal year 2020, we did not spend as much on our local match, therefore you can't carry over the federal dollars. But in 2021, we received the grant again. So we've carried over some federal funds, and we received federal funds this fiscal year.
Okay. So essentially it's been consistent, but not particularly any large change up or down.
It's been consistent what we've received. It's just in 2020, our expenses were a lot lower.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just want to, here from our perspective, we got to work with Office of Finance and Budget to kind of quantify what these amounts are as we look at the entire budget and the whole scope. So I just wanted to, particularly since you have a large deal of federal funds primarily that you deal with, I wanted to just get that on the record. So once again, Sidus Masi, for all that you do. It's really God's work. I know that, the clientele that you serve is eternally grateful and need your help, on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. So thank you and to your entire team for all that you do. Mr. Chairman, Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Ada, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. Thank you to the panel for being here today and presenting your budget request. I just have a couple of follow-up questions. And the first one, Madam Director, if you will, you did mention that you did request for $3 million from the governor from the ARP funds. I'm not sure when Senator Taidigui was asking if or the Vice Speaker Barnes, did you plan to hire some staff with that? You did mention office aides and admin staff.
That is our goal, sir, to hire at least 6 additional staff members.
Okay, so when you do hire those staff members under the ARP funding, long-term, are they going to be on a contractual type basis to where once that funding runs out, then their employment runs out, or do you plan to transition them from ARP funding to general funding, or?
Our ultimate goal is to get them in on general funding, and also, like we shared at the beginning, that we're availing to some grants we're applying for, so that could support our need when it comes to the grants.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think some concerns are, right, is that we know that these fundings are available during the ARP, but realistically, what would our general fund be come 2023, 2024, right? So I think that's where cautious needs to be had when hiring individuals under ARP and then transferring them over to general fund. The other question I did have is, how long do you anticipate to stretch the $3 million, that you request? If you do get it, how long do you anticipate to stretch that for?
As of what you just said is September 2023. That's our goal.
So then you look at only about a year to stretch?
2 years, and then, like I said, we have been applying for grants, and I know that's not the end-all, do-all, but that's what our goal is, that we've been applying for grants.
Okay, thank you. And the only other question I had was, I know earlier was mentioned on the prior year obligation, 51,810, that you did mention that it was onto the budget request?
2022.
Yes, okay, so if it was on the budget requests, on your narrative here on one of your packet, it says no PO vendor sent to government claims. So where is this going to be paid out from? Is it going to be your budget or from the government claims?
During the time in fiscal year 2018 and in 2000, I believe it was in 2019, because it became a prior year obligation and there was it was not in the public law to use the current year funds to pay for prior year expenditures. We did seek the assistance of Department Administration to pay the 5 months in fiscal year 2018. We also recommended for our landlord to go to through the AG's office, which they did. Currently, we're looking at the $51,000 being paid for, possibly when, we don't have it in our current year budget, but we're looking at paying some of it possibly through the ARP funds.
So that's the question, right, is that if the vendor had already submitted it to the Government Claims Act, so does that now stay with the Government Claims Act until it's adjudicated and paid, or what is your understanding of it?
We do know that when we sent them to the government claims, AG's office contacted us, and at the time, our response was we did not have current year funds to pay for that. This has been ongoing since 2019 and 20. Up to date, the vendor, they have received the response from the AG's office, but they continue to seek our office for payment. We just recently got, I think they must have seen the ad in the article in the paper, so they're coming to us now for that prior year obligation to be paid.
Okay. Yeah, we just want to make sure that if it's paid out through the Government Claims Act, then it gets deleted from your budget request to pay out that funding. Okay. But that's the only questions I have, and thank you guys again for being here. I really appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Adams. Senator Brown, do you have any questions or comments to the panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be able to ask questions of DISID. I did want to ask, you had mentioned earlier when the speaker inquired the transfer of these funds, that you have these contracts now that are under your responsibility. They used to be under Catholic Social Services. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? I'm not as well aware of that.
So this is the, behavioral used to have the monies and they contracted CSS
Okay,
to do 3 programs, CareDot, CHP, and Respite.
okay. And so now that's being transferred to you. Are you going to issue out a contract for those services now and oversee that process?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Because granted, I'm sure there's a lot of work through your contracting that actually helps facilitate for your clients out there that you're not physically able to from the department's level. I appreciate that clarification. I wanted to ask, because you had mentioned earlier at the beginning of the pandemic, when they were going to set up a temporary housing area for the homeless, to make sure that they met the requirements or the necessary requirements for access. With your limited staffing resources, I'm assuming you're really not able to look at or deal with any new construction that's going on, be it private businesses, public facilities that are being built. Are you just banking on the Department of Public Works inspector to do that, to make sure that these facilities meet your standards and requirements under law?
Yes. So DPW is the one that gives out the permit.
Yes.
So they will go through that route as a new construction or building or any renovation that has done. It has to go through DPW. And I'm sure that I believe that Ms. Paris did state that we are meeting with individuals from each agency to do the ADA coordinator representative. And we do it every 2 weeks. We meet with a representative from an agency.
So are you able in any way, I mean, aside from it being a problem that comes knocking at the door, because normally the problems come knocking at the door, right? You mentioned that you're having these regular meetings, but are you able to facilitate, because sometimes the government of Guam is our biggest violator, ensuring that department and agencies are meeting those requirements all the way down to the ratio for parking for disabilities. Are you guys helping to facilitate and assist your government of Guam departments that sometimes it's not on the front burner in terms of focus?
Ironically,
I know it's an ongoing problem, but how's that coming along for you?
in fact, Senator, that's exactly what we talked about last week, about the accessible parking, what the numbers are per building, what's the capacity with the employees, how the employees are allowed to access the accessible parking, how a customer is allowed to access the accessible parking. If you park on the blue line, you could get a ticket. All these things were the work that we discussed with them last week. So yes, ma'am, we are working on that. And we do tell them that they need to come back and let us know what are they finding out, right, from their agency. We did share that, right now, we did share with the airport that you are allowed to charge. So if you go to the airport, there's an area that individuals with disability that have placards can park, and they're not charged, but they can still charge because the main thing is they have the accessibility to park. There's nothing in their barriers or obstacles for them to get into the building. So we did mention to the group last week that, just be prepared that if the hospital is built, you may get charged just coming in, regardless of your placard or not.
Right.
It's the parking itself. So we're sharing that with them, and moving forward of the capacity of how many people can maximize the building, how many stalls you need. Does it necessarily need to be by the building? The answer is no. It doesn't necessarily need to be right at the building when it comes to accessible parking, as long as it's right into the ramps and it's accessible. So for example, at DISID, I believe they're on the second floor. That's where their accessible parkings are. It's not on the first. And the good part about that is if you're coming into DISID and you do need that accessible parking, everybody knows it's not on the second floor. You're not going to look on the first and find out it's not there. Go to the third, it's not there. If they're all located in the same area, that a person holding the placard, it's only on the second floor, so you don't have to go to the third or the fourth. So that's also another thing we recommend. So individuals don't have to keep looking if they're trying to go to a company, a hotel, or an organization.
Well, I think, granted, there's limits to funding, and I certainly share the concern that was relayed by Senator Atta with regards to the the federal funding that we're having temporarily deal with this pandemic, because even if we do, and I know that there's been discussions on, at least we've heard indirectly, that there may be interest in using those positions to hire, and while we recognize there's some very critical positions in the government, we would be concerned that when the funding does end, that there's not going to be general fund money to absorb that. So I certainly appreciate if you do go down this road, that you do pursue your grant options, because I'd hate you to have to hire someone that you desperately need, and then, a year from now be in a situation where there is no general fund money to cover them, and then what? You don't want to, especially in your field, I mean, you want to have the people that you do hire encouraged and positive energy, because the work that you do is very challenging. I mean, a lot of departments and agencies have challenging work, but the work you do is very challenging. And so it's just something to be mindful of as the head of the agency to think about that. And if you do look at that as a temporary source of funding, that you're going to have something else, because I can't guarantee, I don't think any of us at this point can guarantee where our economy is going to be, especially if we are not able to get back on track with our tourism industry that's been dormant for now a year and a half. It's going to take time to gear it up to even get to where we were last year. So it's just something to be mindful of. But one position that I know Senator Tello had commented on, that definitely having a key staffer that can assist to facilitate with Department of Public Works, and also go out as the work Ms. Perez is doing with the Government of Guam agency, so that when you do have new construction, it's just additional eyes. I mean, I don't want to add to the level of additional review that goes on during the building permit, because I know for a lot of people that's a big enough challenge to get through the Gov Guam maze to get through a building permit. But having a key person in your department that can go and assist and facilitate, and also be a part of these inspections when they do happen, to ensure that the new construction, moving forward, that all the new construction, even though we know by law, there's a lot of laws in the books that are not being enforced, and especially for those that need that level of accessibility, we'd like to move forward that there's no new construction that's not in compliance. I mean, we're all talking all the way things down to sidewalks on the side of the road that have telephone poles sticking up the middle of them. But it would be good that would be prioritized, so that you have your arms and ears, so to speak, and your eyes out there to make sure new construction is compliant. And then, of course, existing, especially for Gov Guam facilities, private facilities, because I'm sure you're going to get calls if you haven't already, just with regards to disability parking that doesn't meet the right size, right identification, right placing of signage for visibility. Those are basic things we kind of take for granted if we're able-bodied, but if we weren't, it's something that would be a concern. So I know you have a lot of needs in your agency, and I certainly also, as my other colleagues, appreciate the time both you and Mrs. Perez took to sit down and talk with us. But definitely to minimize moving forward, I think having that key staffer position out there to help you facilitate would make a big difference, particularly just with complaints coming in, to have someone that can go out and immediately look at the site and see what can be done with either the government agency or the private business to put people in compliance, because that's what we need. Finding people is one thing if we need to do that, but it's getting the corrections put in place so that they're able to do what they need to do with accessibility. Because if we live long enough, all of us at some degree are going to have a disability. But is that something, I know you mentioned earlier that that's a need that you have in your agency. I mean, how do you juggle it now, just among yourselves? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and Senator, you are so right. It is a crucial need. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that the panel hears us hearing that specific request. And your last question was, well, how do you address it when you get the call? Yeah. That changes just like that we have to, I actually have to say, okay, you know what, I'm sorry, is your social, the social worker that assists us, because like I said, he has a law degree. I said, do you have any pending cases, any client coming in? He goes, no. I said, do you mind just coming with me to the site? And he will, so, and it happens to Ms. Perez too. She'll like, oh, can you come with me to the site, right? And so, of course, we have, again, it's so crucial that we get that position, and because, Mr. Warfield has been kind of a great guy that just willing to jump on whenever we need his help, and he literally, even down to Zooms, hey, come in, we need you to be a part of this because we're going to talk legal aspects of ADA or Medicaid waiver or any of that. Sure. So thank you so much. It really is a crucial need that we're looking for.
Well, and it comes down to, I mean, most people are not aware. I mean, depending on the occupancy of a building, there's a certain ratio, there's a requirement that determines how many disability parking is required for that facility. And I'm sure a lot of that just isn't enforced. You know, you have some sizable facilities people are walking into, and there's 2 or 3 parking spaces, and it's not equitable to what the law requires for disability parking.
Yeah, thank you.
One other thing I also wanted to ask with regards to your operations and how you guys are moving forward with the work that your agency is doing, because we briefly discussed at the time I'd introduced a bill which was passed last week, and should it be signed into law, is going to require department and agencies now to start broadcasting, you know, either through their platforms on YouTube or other things like that, to be able to broadcast their meetings. And the requirement should have put in place, if they don't do that, then the actions of their department or agency become null and void if they don't meet those requirements. And I know we talked about different things like closed caption, for example. I mean, the legislature we televise, but we don't have closed caption capability, even with all our sophisticated cameras and things that we have. And I think that's something we have to work on, and then work in the next step as we orientate government agencies to this new expectation of being able to broadcast their meetings so that the public has awareness and access live while these things are happening. Is that something you can help facilitate with these government department and agencies, and also with us? I mean, that's something we need to address as well, so that persons with hearing or visual impairment can still be able to participate and listen in on these type of events.
We definitely want to provide that service. Just give us that call.
Okay.
In fact, when we start our ADA coordinator representative meeting, every time we start it, we actually tell them, just remember, if you want to access your closed caption, go down to the bottom, click on it, and it will give you the access to the closed caption. I say this all the time, and I'm sure they get tired of me saying it. You can move the closed caption around if it bothers you in any way.
Right.
So remember, you don't have to access it, but we want you to know it's there for you.
Right, and you were telling me that on our computers, those features are available also.
Yes.
But if people are watching this on TV, you know, could we turn to the channel, government channel that's being aired right now on the cable TV, for example, and watch closed caption?
Yeah. I mean, and the great thing about our community of Guam is, for example, KUM, again, they ended up putting up the closed captions.
Yes, I noticed they have that on their channel, yes.
Yeah, because they weren't, at one point they were, and then then it went off again, and I'm like, what happened? So made that call, and it went back on.
Yeah.
So it's just probably a reminder back to what you say, Senator, it's a click.
Yes.
Maybe you forgot the couple months to click it on, right?
Yes.
Because the host has to do it. The host is the one that has access to it. Kind of like WhatsApp. It's the administrator, when you create a WhatsApp chat, it's the administrator who gets to invite people. It's the same way with the virtual meetings.
Well, and I think if this bill does become into law, I mean, that's something we can dialogue on. So that's another issue, again, when you're engaging with the government representatives, for them to prepare for and include in their operations, and orientate them to it so that they can be prepared, and whoever is administering who's the administrator can be aware of that. Just so we can help facilitate for those, particularly, I would assume if I had some of these limitations, I might be at home and my whole world might be engaging from, you know, being on my computer or watching my television, to keep myself informed. So I think what we can do to help facilitate, and again, it's still, in spite of the fact that ADA has been around for so many years, our ability to catch up and comply, we're not there yet. I think in all fairness, we can say we're not there yet. So I hope that's something we can move forward on so that we can facilitate information. And for me, facilitating information to our people on how their government is operating is probably more important on my list than a lot of things that we do, so that they have a sense of ensuring that we're performing to their expectations. So I appreciate a lot of your input already on the questions that were already asked with regards to the specifics of the budget. I give you credit, you know, looking at the issues that you have to deal with, the challenges that you have to deal with. And sometimes we have a tendency to forget in our busy world, you know, the reality of what a lot of our people are that have disabilities, are elderly out there that are not as visible to our eyes every day unless they're a member of your family, and even some don't even have family support. You know, what work you do to help those out there that are most in need, and it is appreciated. And we recognize that there's more support that's needed to give to you, because while humanly there's only so much you can do, and yet the demands are very great out there. So I certainly appreciate your time and providing the information on the budget, and look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Thank you very much,
Senator.
Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to ask these questions.
Thank you, Senator Brown. All my colleagues have ended their questions. Ms. Guåhan, you made a statement, you request from the governor ARP $3 million. Can we get a copy of that letter that you requested, the $3 million? So we know the details of what you asked for.
Okay.
That's number one. Number two, there were some issues mentioned about ARP money, funds, you might use it for personnel. You're well aware that those are reoccurring costs that will burden the government of Guam in finding ways to support our disability folks, okay? When I say burden, I'm not referring to, I don't support the individuals that have disability. As a matter of fact, I like to find ways to take care of them. But what is missing, I hate to say this, but what we need you to do is, because there are great questions that were asked, scenarios given. We would need you to respond by providing us in detail how you plan on countering that or responding to their request. That's number one. We need a report from you so that all the senators can see, and when we start discussing the budget and DISID comes into the picture, we have the answers. Then we can move on. We don't need to bring you back in the committee of the whole. No, stay at your office, continue doing what you're doing. But if you don't provide us the answers, don't expect the results that you brought up today, okay? Because you didn't, it would be self-inflicted, okay? That's number two. Number three, there was a bunch of questions I submitted to you during our meeting. I need you to respond. Give us an answers. Because those questions I gave you, instead of asking it here, if you respond, my colleagues would be happy with the answers. Number four, you have prior year obligations. You know for a fact, in the past less than a month, we received notice that there was $46 million in surplus. The governor's office, the Department of Administration is reaching out to every vendor. If you've got a bill in the Gov Guam, send it to us and we'll pay you. The vendors all know this. It's all over the news. So if a vendor's reaching out to you, you need to reach out to DOA and direct them there. Don't take it upon yourself, because you don't have a surplus, you have a shortage, okay? Avoid answering the questions, just refer the questions to DOA. And with that, the committee will conclude this public hearing, and we'll be expecting more answers from your agency, Mrs. Guåhan.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
So we already even have a narrative, but we just didn't bring it with us. The gaps of services that we're actually gearing it towards the ARP. So we'll be able to provide that, sir.
No problem. Just provide it all now, because we're gonna wrap this up on your budget hearing. This will conclude the budget hearing. The committee will continue to receive testimony, such as the documents you're going to provide to us. And please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, submitted via email to Senator Joe S. and Agustin at gmail.com, or delivered to my office, located at Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. It's Jesus Mercy for your attendance today, Ms. Guåhan and your staff, and participating in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching the budget hearing on Bill 55-36 CR relative to the Department of Integrated Service for Individuals with Disability is now adjourned. It is now 11 o'clock. Please have a nice day and be safe. Take care. Thank you.